So, all of you, a very, very good morning and welcome to the class 2 of the chapter Deduction, Collection and Recovery of Tax. So, whereby we have done in the previous class is discussing about the concept of TDS. Why the concept of TDS is important, guys? Trust me, when I was your age or when I cleared my entrance exam, I did not have that roughly clear idea that how TDS actually work. But eventually, when we did articleship, it those concepts got cleared, and at the first place the realization was, why did not I know the concept? Because you do audit my articleship, you have to check the tedious provisions. You do accounting, you should know what is a liability, how why tedious payable is becoming liability, how do you depositing that. You are into your income tax practice, you have to do tedious return filing every day. So all in all, it's a very integral part. Plus, most of the important thing, this is a very important part of your question paper also. So ICAI has mindfully kept all the correct sections which are required at your inter level. Definitely, there are more than that. There are around 30-40 sections which cover. But what are covered in this case are being covered at your level, are being covered. And what I request is, in case anyone has missed the concept of TDS, please do go and revise that half an hour class which we had on Thursday, so that your concepts are clear. Because all these sections ultimately then have a question of deductor, deductee, threshold limit, rate, and time of deduction ultimately. But concept what is something which will help you understand it more better. Concept is something which will help you understand the other provisions more better. Okay, so I'll give you a minute to settle down and ask your question, because today, the last time we did, because today we will start and quickly start a train of one after another section. Because in the previous class we did it slow so that your concept of TDS would be clear. We did section 192, section 193, and section 194A. Now we'll be starting with section 194C. So if you have any doubts, if you have any queries, please, please, please do ask. Guys, अगर किसी की query रह जाती है ना, please try to make sure that you ask it before the class ends again, because sometimes there are so many of the chat messages, sometimes it gets skipped, okay? And again, my first request is always to first understand the concept, understand the impact of that concept, and then make those hypothetical situations, okay? Good morning, everyone. Rito, Rutiraj, Komal, Sakshi, very good morning. Priyanka, Sanjana, Mukteshwari, very good morning. Kadambari, Manohar, Anmol, Avni, Hardik, Ajay, Sankar, Neha, all of you. Very good morning, Kiran. TDS there. See, first of all, Rito, we will not say TDS is there for all types of income. TDS is basically on payments. So we will say whether TDS is there on all types of payments or not. So my answer to this is yes, on most type of payments it is, but only to the one which are covered in sections. Which are not there, you will not specially go and find out which section is covered. So most of them are there, but not all of the types of payment. Lower TDS relief, Priyanka, I will come to that concept. Let us first cover all the sections, okay? Shri Krishna, we are already doing the amendment part also, which is applicable in your case. Health insurance premium, first of all, Avni, And everyone, now you are learn at a learning stage, you don't have to write health insurance premium is exempt. That is technically wrong. Start write health insurance premium is tax deductible or is allowed as deduction. Exemption is a wrong word to use for health insurance premium. Number one, health insurance premium is definitely tax deductible. Similarly, LIC premium is also tax deductible. So which question are you referring to so that I can give you the answer? Because LIC received on maturity is taxable if it is not exempt under section 1010D. But when you talk about premiums, they are tax deductible under chapter 6A, and you can take the deductions from the gross total income. Hmm. Okay, so let's begin today's class. Everyone back on full energy. Anyone has any doubt? I hope you're preparing chart which was being told to. So, great. Section 194C, one of a very important section. Please, I hope this chart, which is there in a very bad handwriting on your screen, I hope you're preparing it. Okay. So section 194C is a very important section because this section is something which is very common. I mean, any transaction, if you are doing as a payment for some sort of service, comes under 194C. The section says TDS on payment of contracts. Let me just talk about this. TDS on payment to contractors or subcontractors. Before I proceed and make you understand what is this particular section, contractor or work contractor, see, whenever we are talking subcontractors, whenever we are talking for any contractor work, we basically simply say ki, yes, you have to do a particular task or a particular job. What type of contractors and subcontractors are covered? The person who do work contracts, the person who do work contracts, or a contract of carrying out any specific work. Specific work, and the contract can be of work or contract can be of labor. Now you will say, ma'am, example, see, if between you and me, you give me a task to for a maintenance of some AC, that is a work. Giving a task of whitewashing, that is a work. Giving a task of painting, that is a work. Giving a task of labor, if, what I say about labor, suppose someone is working as a security guard, that is a work contract between them. Because that might not be an employer-employee relationship. Why? Because you have not taken him as a employee. There is no master servant relationship. You just told that this is our obligation. If you'll do the obligation, I'll give you the payment. That's it. So it becomes a work contract. It becomes a work contract. Anything which involves giving off some work is a work contract. You think about anything, it is a work contract. But yes, if that particular job or that particular work requires some skill, requires some degree, requires some technical knowledge, then it goes into professional. Then it goes into a professional or a technical services. It will not be your simple work contract. For example, plumber. A plumber, as in plumber, plumber is coming for repairing a pipe. That is a normal work contract. But a plumber, if is coming for putting on some technical type of advancement in understanding the pipe flow, etc., that is something which requires a sort of technical knowledge. That will be my technical services. For example, a carpenter is a work contract. If I'm making a payment to him because I gave a contract to him to make a sofa or something like that. But at the same time, if someone is doing an interior decoration service, that becomes a professional receipt. Why? Because that is basically requires some degree, some knowledge, some degree of diploma, some degree of diploma or some specific expertise, right? But when I talk about work, yeah, there is a sort of manual skill required, but not to that technical knowledge. Someone is a typist, that is a work contract. But someone at the same time, if I keep a CA on a retainership model or a freelancer model, that becomes a professional receipts. So where a person who is providing that knowledge has that technical skills or degree or expertise, specifically, crucially, that becomes your professional part. But if in general, if I talk about having certain type of common tasks done, that becomes my work contract. For example, if I'm keeping, I give an example of a accountant. If I'm keeping any accountant who is just a graduate working as a freelancer for me, that is a work contract. But at the same time, if that accountant as a person, as in a person having a degree or has a certain degree of expertise, that becomes a professional receipts. That becomes a professional expense or a technical expense. Taking an advice from someone is a technical expense. Giving again the same basic example, uh, someone who is painting the house that has a work contract with me, and not necessarily by work contract, I mean a signing written document. It can be a verbal contractual obligation also. But someone who is architecting a house, he's an architect. That is not a work contract. That is a professional expense. That is a professional expense. So you have to draw a very thin line between both the thing, that what is a work contract and what is a professional aspect. One degree of knowledge, one degree of diploma, one expertise makes that same experience a professional expense or a technical expense versus a general work contract. Why I'm saying for the past 2-3 minutes and giving all these examples is because there are two sections. Section 194C and Section 194J. 194C talks about payments to work contract or general contractors or subcontractors. 194J talks about payments made for professional services or technical services or royalty, etc. यहाँ पे the rate is 10% or 2% as the case may be. यहाँ पे the rate is 1% or 2%. So there is a lot of variation. एक जगह you are deducting on a payment of say 1 lakh just 1,000 rupees, and at one place you're deducting 10,000 rupees. So variation is there, correct? So you have to correctly see what is a work contract for 194C and what is a professional payment. क्रक्स इज जहां पे टेक्निकल एलिमेंट आ गया, एक्सपर्टीज आ गया, डिप्लोमा आ गया, सम डिग्री आ गया, दैट बिकम माई प्रोफेशनल और टेक्निकल सर्विसेज. Otherwise, a general one, obviously, if I'm talking about a carpenter also, he has that skill. I'm not saying he has that skill, but necessarily he has not done some degree or diploma or expertise knowledge to get that. It is totally coming from his experience, correct? Got it? Any doubt, guys? अब proceed करते हैं. Job book, yes. So 194C covers payment to contractors and subcontractors. So if X is making payment to Y for a contract or a work contract or a job work, then who is a contractor and who is a contractee? X is obviously, we know, is a payer because he is making a payment. Y is the pay, correct. X को from the TDS perspective, we call a deductor also because he's the source, he will make the payment. And Y को we call a deductee also. This is also clear. But who would be the contractor in this case? Just because वो payer, deductor, OR वाली sound आ रही है, ER वाली, वो contractor नहीं बन जाएगा, नहीं. Y is a contractor and X is a contractee. जिसको contract, जो कर रहा है contract, वो the contractor who is performing the contract ultimately, and the person who's making payment for that contract is a contractee. Why I'm telling you this term, that sometimes it's written that payment to contractor and you don't get confused. Payer is alag, deductor is alag, contractor is alag. Yes, payer and deductor are same thing. But when I talk about contractor, that is a different thing. Similarly, Y is making payment to any other person to him who has subcontracted it. Suppose he has subcontracted, suppose I gave Y the job to paint the house. Now he has subcontracted someone for the POP or for the ceiling thing, right? So Y, when making payment to Z, that is a payment for a subcontract. That is a subcontractor in that case. That is also deductible under 194C. Now, So can I again write it in this chart? This particular section, section 194C, C talks about payment to contractors. Secondly, who is the eligible deductor and who is the eligible deductee? Again, since I gave an example, you saw that there are a lot of payments of contractual nature which we are making day in and day out. But remember 194A, may I told you कि they remove people who have a lower turnover or a lower professional receipt because they don't want to overburden them with TDS compliances. Similarly, 194C may be all person would deduct the TDS except individual and HUF, and individual and HUF will deduct TDS only if in the preceding year, preceding preceding financial year, the turnover is more than 1 crore and gross receipts is more than 50 lakhs. Then only they will deduct the TDS. Question can come to you to confuse that last year the turnover was 1 crore 2 lakhs. This year the turnover is 90 lakhs. Only he has to deduct TDS. You will say the answer is yes, he's an eligible deductor. He's an eligible deductor. So from now on, where all these common sections, guys, which you will see 194A, 194C, and upcoming sections like J, I, etc., they will cover individual and HF only if they have requisite turnover. Why? Because those payments are some common payments. And the idea is to not overburden someone who is already operating on a low turnover with TDS compliances. So उनको हटा दिए. Someone who is having a good turnover, only individual NHF may, only they have to do those TDS compliances. So again, I will say from now on, I will say कि वो 194A वाले deductor so that you can remember it. किसका TDS काटेंगे? Who would be the deductee? The deductee here again would be any resident person. Deductee any resident person. Next question comes on, what is the rate? Rate, my friend, rate मतलब किस TDS में किस rate पे tax deduct होगा? At the rate of 1% or 2%. 1% when the payment is made to an individual in HF. See, the rate has been kept at a very low percentage. Why? Because these payments you will see you are making on a daily basis, and the payments which you are making to are to a person who has a very less income. So they don't want कि उसका cash flow कम हो जाए. So that's why just 1% if a payment is made to individual and HUF, and in case of other, it is 2%. So suppose I am making as an individual making a payment to Mr. X for a work contract, I will deduct TDS at 1%. If I am making a payment to a partnership firm for a work contract, I will deduct TDS at the rate of 2%. So the TDS rate depends upon the payee, deductee. Next question is, at what time the payment has to be done? At the time of credit. At what time the tax has to be deducted? At the time of credit or payment, whichever is earlier. Threshold limit. Threshold limit. इसको अभी ऐसे लिखो 30K in single transaction or a single bill or 1 lakh in aggregate. इस पे भी हम we will focus. 1 lakh in aggregate. All question answered? Majorly. Work contract khatam? No. Work contract has started. Now the true game has started. Don't worry. One by one we will cover up all. So guys, back to understanding work contract. X makes a payment to Y, that is a subcontractor or a contractor. Y को payment करते time or at the time of due, whichever is earlier, X will deduct the TDS at the rate of 1%. But the question is, what is the threshold limit, ma'am? At what point the payment crosses, I have to deduct the tax. The threshold limit is 30,000 in a single bill or 1 lakh in aggregate. Yani, during a financial year, if X makes a payment to Y, Either the single transaction is of more than 30,000, he will deduct the tax. But a transaction is not more than 30,000, but during the year, the payment has been made in multiple transactions and it is now crossing 1 lakh, then the TDS has to be deducted. For example, X making payment to Y for 20,000. Will he deduct the TDS? On suppose he's making the payment in May 23. Will he deduct the TDS? The answer is no, because the bill is not crossing 20,000 or 30,000. Then he made the payment to Y on June 23, as in 2023. Say, let's fix a date also of 40,000. Will he deduct the TDS? Yes. Why? The bill is crossing 30,000. Is pay at the rate of 1%. He will deduct the TDS and then he will make the net payment. Okay? Why I have not deducted on 20 also? Because it has not crossed 1 lakh in aggregate. Then again on 9th September, he made another payment of 20,000. Will he deduct the TDS? The answer is no. The bill is not crossing, the single transaction is not crossing 30. And in aggregate, 40 plus 20, 60 plus 20, 80, it has not crossed 1 lakh. The account for that particular year for Y has not crossed 1 lakh. No TDS is required to be deducted. Then, now on 15th of November, another payment of 35,000 is made. Now the TDS is required to be deducted. Correct. The answer is this will say, कि ma'am bill 30,000 का हो गया. But Baba, at the same time, now the account has crossed the aggregate of 1 lakh also. So technically, या तो 30,000 हो जाए या 1 lakh हो जाए, TDS has to be deducted. So naturally, you will say कि मैम 350 कटना चाहिए और 35,000. But guys, account भी तो aggregate 1 lakh से cross हो गया. So technically, कितना हो गया? 35 plus 20 plus 20 plus 40. 1 lakh 15,000. 1 lakh 15,000 pe guys, how much TDS is required to be deducted? 1% के according 1150. But already in this 1 lakh 15,000, you've already deducted TDS on 40,000 earlier. So 400 नहीं काटोगे. So what TDS you will deduct? 750. 750. You will deduct the TDS and then you will make the net payment of 34 to 50. Okay? This is the most important point in the part of 194C, that either the bill or account in aggregate is crossing 30,000. अब next bill अगर अब 10,000 का भी आया तब भी you have to deduct the TDS because now the account in aggregate has crossed 1 lakh. So if I take up this case, यहाँ पे क्या लिखा हुआ है? No deduction will be required to be made if the consideration for the contract does not exceed 30,000. Agree? However, to prevent the practice of composite contracts being split up into the contracts valued at less than 30,000 to avoid tax deduction. Because ऐसे 30,000 single transaction as in single contract का, they fix the amount of 30,000. But everyone then can do कि 30,000 से less के bill दे दे even for a service of more than 1 lakh or for a service of what not amount. So to avoid that, it has been provided that tax will be required to be deducted at source where the amount credited or paid or likely to credit or paid to a contractor or subcontractor exceeds 30,000 in single payment or 1 lakh in aggregate during the financial year. So इसी के हिसाब से they have done this illustration on the screen also, illustration 3, whereby ABC Limited is making payment to Mr. X, a contractor, for contract work during the year 23-24. ABC Limited है, company है, yes, they have to deduct the TDS irrespective of the limit, work contract, irrespective of their turnover. Mr. X है, resident contractor है, I'm assuming. इनका TDS हम काटेंगे at the rate of 1%. ठीक है, these are the following payments. Will I deduct the TDS on 20,000? Answer is no. Will I deduct the TDS on 25,000? Answer is no. Will I deduct the TDS on 28,000? Answer is no. Because even including this, 20, 25 plus 28. It is not crossing 1 lakh. But the moment this 30,000 ka bill came due on 1st of March, it comes to 1 lakh 3,000. Now, when I'm making the due entry on 1st of March on 2024, I will make it like work contract, say suppose whatever is the payment for work contract expense, account debit, 30,000 to Mr. X and to tax deducted, which is TDS payable now. That would be on 1 lakh 3,000. I will deduct the tax of at the rate of 1%, which is 1030. Sorry, what I live there? 1030 and would make the net due of 28970. Got it? How did this done? This is the entry on 1st March 2024. The example which I took was more complex because उसमें क्या हो रहा था? One stage it was crossing 30, then another stage it was not crossing 30. I did not deduct it. So specifically, this is a complex example which is here. June में मैंने TDS deduct किया. I deducted the tax at source, but in September I did not. Why? Because it is not crossing either 30 or 1 in aggregate. So this is a very important point. Does anyone has any doubt on this? So Priyanka, again, in real life, a lot of people, when you will do the practice, they are deducting tax from day one. Because 1% है किस 200-300 रुपए का फर्क होता है किसी को, they don't impact matter. This doesn't matter much to the person around. And they know that, okay, right now the bill is not crossing 30,000 or the account is not crossing 1 lakh, but eventually during the year it will cross 1 lakh because they have been dealing with the same party for years. So that's why they deducted from day one. So technically, the practice is just for convenience. The law does not say so. The law does not say so. The law says the time of deduction is at this particular date. So you have to deduct it at this particular date. If you're deducting before, income tax वालों को problem नहीं है. उनके पास tax आ रहा है as soon as they are getting the TDS, they are fine. But if you miss the deadline of deducting the tax, then it is a problem. Similarly, if you deduct someone's tax at the rate of 10% instead of 1%, the other person can obviously make a problem out of it. But if you're depositing it to the government, giving him the tax credit about it, all is sorted. So practical life may, yes, things are a bit molded to make it convenient, but what law says that is important. ठीक है? Sorry guys, 1 second. Now, before I proceed, first we have to understand few things in TDS itself. The definition of work. The definition of work. अब बोलोगे मैम आपने इतने सारे एग्जांपल्स 5 मिनट बोला तो सही what becomes work. Definitely I told you what comes under work. But income tax specifically has written that you got the understanding of work. It can be a contract of work or contract of labor. We understand, but in any situation, work contract would cover or the work term would cover these things, these 5 things would always be my 194C. But if I'm making someone a payment of advertising, it would always be 194C because it says work includes. It is not saying work means. Work means होता तो ये चीजें होता work का मतलब. But it is saying कि work के मतलब में these all things would be included. That means कि definition में these things would always be included. These are work includes advertising. If I'm making someone a payment for advertising, that would be a work contract. Ma'am, for example, I want an ad in a newspaper. I'm making payment to ad agency. That is a work contract. I will deduct tax under 194C. Similarly, if I'm making a payment for a hoarding जानते हो ads जो highways पे होती हैं, roads पे होती हैं, metros पे होती है. So I'm making payment for that. That is 194C. That is 194C. Making payment for broadcasting, telecasting, including production of programs for such broadcasting or telecasting. What is broadcasting and telecasting? When you are reaching masses through video mode, that is called telecasting. When we are reaching masses through audio mode, like radios, that is called broadcasting. जहाँ पे वीडियो आ जाता है वो टेलीकास्ट हो जाता है, जहाँ पे रेडियो या other than visual aspect आता है, that is broadcasting. So suppose including production of programs. So for example, let's see ZTV made a payment to Balaji. Balaji, you know, Ekta Kapoor. Okay, I'm not sure Gen Z knows about it. So Balaji Production House is a house which makes programs, TV shows. Okay, so ZTV making payment for production of program to Balaji. That, if as per specification, comes under 194C because production of program would ultimately be used for telecasting. Okay. Carriage of goods or passengers by any mode of transport other than by railways. Matlab, if I'm making payment to a transport agency or a transporter for carrying my goods from one place to another, that is 194C, guys. कहने का मतलब है, suppose I am making payment to a consignment agency or a transport agency. मेरा goods from factory, they have to take it to the go down. Now, I'm making them the payment, that transport payment, that is for carriage of goods by any mode of transport. Railways नहीं, अगर वो कार से ले जाते हैं, टेम्पो से ले जाते हैं, विक्रम से ले जाते हैं, और by bus ले जाते हैं, और by truck, big truck, small truck, does not matter. But if they're taking it, transportation of goods from one place to another, 194C may I'll deduct. Similarly, transportation of passengers. I'm making payment to a bus agency because they provide pickup and drop facility for my employees. So that is carriage of passengers. Okay. So I will deduct TDS under 194C. Railways से अगर कुछ जाता है तो I will not deduct TDS under 194C for making payment to railways. But except any other mode through plane, train, to plane, bus, whatever mode you can think of, 194C would cover. Even ships, 194C would cover. Catering क्या होता है guys? Catering मतलब खाने पीने के लिए when you make an arrangement for eating foods, when you make an arrangement on an event, etc., that is called catering. For example, we had a seminar. And on seminar, we had a catering for all our employees. Or say on New Year, we had a catering for all our employees. खाने पीने का व्यवस्था, okay? The arrangement for food, etc. That catering, guys, comes under 194C. So when I'm making payment to that caterer, I will deduct TDS under 194C. Up, abhi tak we have covered A, B, C, D. Now coming to the last point. Manufacturing of a product. Abhi I'll say it. Manufacturing or supplying of a product according to the requirement or specification of customer by using material purchased from such customer or its associate. बस इतना, आगे कभी छोड़ो. ठीक है, अभी मैंने क्या हाईलाइट किया? मैन्युफैक्चरिंग और सप्लाइंग अ प्रोडक्ट according to the requirement or specification of customer by using material purchased from the customer or its associate, मतलब जो relative section 42B में आते हैं मैम, मतलब सिंपल सा. Let me give an example of a sofa. I don't know how it is made. Okay, suppose this is a sofa. If I go and purchase a sofa on, say, Urban Ladder or Paper-3A, I purchase it. That would be called a work contract payment? No. It's just a purchase of goods. Purchase पे guys, अभी तक we have not seen any section जहाँ पे TDS कट रहा हो. Purchase of goods पे no TDS is required to be deducted. Okay. Now, second case can be I can hire a carpenter. Carpenter भी छोड़ते हैं. I went to a office nahi, a shop where sofas are there. Okay. I said, ठीक है, I will come after 2 days. I'll take that sofa, but the color of the sofa, as in the cover or the material of the sofa, is a blue color. I want it in brown color. They made it brown. I took it. That is again purchase. Why? Because, okay, supplying to hai, requirement as per specification of customer bhi hai, but it is not by material purchase from the customer or material provided by the customer. वो situation कब होगी? When someone is making my sofa, probably I given them an order, ठीक है, I want this sofa, this color, this particular foam should be used, this particular design should be there, and उसने मुझे बताया कि okay, you want this, मेरे को material ला दो market से, get me this wood, get me this foam, get me this cloth material. तो वो क्या हो गया? Material purchase from such customer in the sense means he's taking the material price from me and then he's recovering from me. You don't get confused from this line, purchase from such customer. Ultimately, the materials are also provided by me. That, my friend, comes under work contract. यहाँ पे manufacturing or supplying of a product है, which is sofa, requirement, which was my specification, and the material for that was provided by me. All those three things fit. That is work contract. But in the first example, where I'm simply going and purchasing by just telling them कि हाँ, specification ये color से ये color कर देना, is not work contract. So whenever you're getting confused in understanding E part, remember the sofa example and you will get a clarity on it. ठीक है. So A, B, C, D, E ये सब work contract की definition में included है. I'm again and again I'm saying these are not just work contract, these are included in the definition of work contract. क्या क्या? Advertising, broadcasting, telecasting, carriage of goods or passengers, catering and manufacturing or supplying of product as per the requirement of the customer and products provided by the customer. Got it? These 5 things would be in work contract. Now, before we proceed, here are some exceptions. Exception number one, guys, which you can write in other remarks also, that personal purpose payment made by individual or HUL, no TDS required. Capital letters where I'm writing, personal payments would not be covered under 194C. Matlab, even if I am an individual, have a turnover of say 50 crores in the preceding year, okay, but if I'm making these payments for my personal purpose, 194C, would not be attracted. For example, catering ka example later. Best example. I am making payment to a caterer for a function in my family. Will I deduct TDS? No. Even if I am an individual, even if I have that turnover, every other thing is tick, even if it is more than 1 lakh, whatever. But since the payment was for personal nature, it is out of the scope of 194C. But at the same time, if I'm a catering, I got the catering services done for a event in office. 194C would be attracted? Yes, it would be attracted. Similarly, I'm shifting my house and I'm moving goods from one place to another. I will not deduct TDS under 194C because the purpose is personal. But again, if I'm moving goods from one place to another or from buyer to seller or whatever, seller to buyer, I will deduct 194C because that is business purpose. Got it? अब ये सोफा वाला एग्जांपल में आता है. If I'm making that sofa for my house, I will deduct the TDS? No. If I'm making that sofa for my office, I will deduct the TDS? Yes. So personal purpose payments are not covered under 194C. Only under 194C and J personal purpose are not covered. But if I talk about 194A interest, personal purpose is covered. And last, sorry, no TDS is required to be deducted when payment is made to transporters. वो carriage of goods वाले में, ठीक है? If the transporter has maximum 10 vehicles at any time during the year, large, small, lightweight, heavyweight, does not matter, and he provides his PAN, giving declaration that I have only 10 vehicles. So as a deductor, will not deduct the tax if he gives the declaration has only 10 vehicles during the year and the payment is made to transporter. पर्सनल है तो वैसे नहीं काटोगे. बिजनेस पर्पस के लिए है, देन यू विल नॉट डिडक्ट द टीडीएफ if he has given the declaration and he's provided you the PAN declaration of what? That I do not have more than 10 trucks at any time during the year. So basically, small transporters ka you will not deduct the tax. Got it? So ये point पे we again dedicated a good time so that you can have a clear understanding about what is work, what types of payments are covered under work. अब बताओ guys, कहीं कोई confusion? Then shall explain your question. Priyanka, everyone, anyone has any doubt? Harish, at any time during the year means, suppose I'm not talking about opening or ending of the year. कभी भी साल में उनका 10 से ज्यादा ट्रक हुआ, तो that transporter would, whenever I'm making payment to them, I will deduct the tax. But small transporters, we will not deduct the tax. कभी भी मतलब, suppose a person had 9 trucks at the beginning of the year, then he purchased 2 trucks, then 11 trucks हो गए, but then he sold the truck, 3 trucks. Then फिर से it came to 8. But at one time during the year it crossed 10, so he is not eligible. Okay? Correct. Mohammed, पर्सनल पर्पस इंडिविजुअल और एचयूएफ का ही होगा ना. कंपनी का क्या पर्सनल पर्पस है? दे आर डूइंग मेकिंग पेमेंट्स ऑफ पर्सनल पेमेंट्स ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स, दैट इज कंप्लीटली रॉन्ग. और पार्टनर, दैट इज कंप्लीटली not right. So individuals and HF, when they are making payment to for personal purpose, they will not deduct the TDS under 194C, even if all boxes are ticked. Then vehicles कोई भी हो, does not matter. Owns less than 10 carriages. Thank you, Divya. Chalo, now let's proceed. So 194C समझ आ रहा है पक्का? अब illustration 4 is a written theory question. So 43 में you know that if again the limit from 10,000 is 35,000 and 194C में if they give you the declaration and PAN, you will not deduct the tax. Simple. Now we come to another section which is brokerage commission. Payments made for commission or brokerage. 194H. Payment made for commission or brokerage, section 194H. Now section 194H, यहाँ पे guys points clear हैं सबको? फिर से बार बार पूछ रही हूँ. हमने slowly sections कर रहे हैं because these are important sections. Manohar, the limits which are discussed, 30,000 या 1 lakh, all these limits are per pay per financial year. एक साल में 1 लाख से ज्यादा पेमेंट हुआ, नेक्स्ट ईयर 20,000 पेमेंट हुआ, डज नॉट मैटर. बीट सेक्शन 194C, बीट सेक्शन 194I, A, all these limits are per person, per payee, per financial year. See, छोटा छोटा ऋतुराज, छोटा छोटा material like nails, as in heel or any, all these things can obviously be done by the performer or the contractor himself. We're talking about the main materials. No. Now, commission or brokerage. Section 194H. So when I'm making payment for commission or brokerage, I will deduct TDS under 194H. मैम commission मतलब सबसे पहले insurance commission छोड़ के, insurance commission क्या होती है? जब agent they get your insurance done, then LIC or the insurance company pay them the commission. For that, they have a separate section 194D. 194H is only for general commissions. I have an agent, उसको I tell कि if you will make those sale, I will give you a commission. I will deduct TDS under 194H. I purchase house. I pay brokerage. I will deduct TDS under 194H if I'm an eligible deductor. Anyone who is working as an agent for my behalf and I'm making payment to them, that is commission or brokerage or whatever name you call about it. The question again the same. Chat में other points में हमने I hope ये 194C में you have written personal purpose and the transport wala. Everyone, please focus on the screen. 194H is simple. So 194H would cover payment for commission and brokerage. TDS will be deducted again by any person except individual and HA, and individual and HA will deduct TDS only if the turnover in the preceding year is more than 1 crore or gross receipt is more than 50 lakhs. Then TDS has to be deducted for any resident person only. If I'm making commission payment to any non-resident, 194H would not be attracted. I'm not saying tax deduction at source would not be attracted. I'm saying 194H would not be attracted. Okay, then guys, what is the next thing? What is the next thing? The rate. TDS has to be deducted at the rate of 5% only at the time of credit or payment, whichever is earlier. And that too when the commission during the year to that person crosses 15,000 per annum. This 15,000 can be in one go, can be in parts. Parts wala, one go wala 30,000 or 1 lakh a condition abhi tak sirf we have seen in payment to contractors and nowhere else. Okay? So, ma'am, if I'm making payment for personal house, will it be covered under 194H? Yes. If you are an individual whose turnover in the preceding year was more than 1 crore, definitely you will deduct TDS under 194H for a brokerage for purchase of a residential house. Why? Because 194H does not make an exception for personal payments, neither 194A, only 194C does. So definitely you will deduct the TDS at the rate of 5% if the commission is more than 15,000. Ma'am, rent के लिए भी जब वो broker घर दिखाता है, yes. In all the cases, you will deduct the tax. Or deduct the TDS मत बोला करो. I also have a very bad habit, right? Deduct the tax. अब इसमें ना guys कुछ circulars है which I will discuss with you. Let's just pick one by one. एक यहाँ पे clarity है of non-applicability but MTNL to BSNL. Abhi, you might not be able to relate all the Gen Z. So earlier, when we were young, they were PCOs. PCOs में क्या होता है? They were provided by BSNL, MTN only. STD PCOs होते थे जिसपे MTNL would used to pay commission to such PCOs. ठीक है? But specifically उनको हटा दिया गया था from the provision of section 194H through a circular. Okay, next is a circular which covers एडवर्टाइजिंग कंपनी कमीशन एक्सेट्रा. अब ध्यान से सुनना, ये एडवर्टाइजिंग वाला वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सर्कुलर है, बहुत वेरी 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 इंपॉर्टेंट सर्कुलर. 194C एंड 194H को हम दो तीन पॉइंट साथ में समझेंगे. टाइम ऑफ डिडक्शन, पेमेंट और क्रेडिट whichever is earlier. इलिस्ट्रेशन 3 में भाई पेमेंट इज मेड टू इंडिविजुअल. डिडक्टी वेब ऑफ डिडक्टी इंडिविजुअल एचयूएफ है, देन 1% है. डिडक्टेड का मैटर नहीं करता, only deducting. Brokerage and share is not included, Vishali, when you will understand. यहाँ पे it's clearly written commission में, commission when a person is acting on behalf of another person for services rendered, for any services in course of buying or selling of goods, in relation to any transaction to for an asset, valuable articles or thing other than securities. तो जो share brokerage है उस पे 194H does not come. Okay, now two types of circulars I will discuss. Please guys focus here. So सबसे पहले guys we will discuss about the ZTV example which I took. So ZTV making payment to Balaji for production of program, for which would be ultimately used for telecasting. Remember? So that is guys 194C. I will pick up one by one everything because these are all related to advertising work. Provided guys that production of program is as per specifications. ठीक है? Specification होना चाहिए ना, because otherwise तो you're just purchasing the copyright of it. So that is not 194C. Copyright मतलब आपने already कुछ बनाया हुआ है, I'm just purchasing it. I've taken the rights for it. Rights payment for purchasing rights is not 194C. But if you're making any program as per my specification, I will tell you what theme I want, who should be the characters, etc., etc. That is 194C. Similarly, making payment to advertisement for advertisement is 194C. A limited making payment to agency, advertising agency for ads in newspaper. They will deduct TDS under 194C. Or now that advertising agency is taking Shah Rukh Khan in that ad, SRK. Ultimately, SRK is also acting, but that is also for advertisement. Advertising agency will make the payment. I am not going and making the payment, or A Limited is not directly going and making a payment to SRK. Advertising agency will make a payment to SRK. They will deduct the TDS under 194J because SRK is an actor. Actor services are professional services which cover under 194J. Okay. Now, suppose an A Limited makes a payment to an advertising agency. Let's say for an ad in newspaper. Okay, they will deduct TDS under 194C. They will deduct TDS under 194C. Now, suppose this advertising agency obviously will make a payment to the newspaper company, let's say Times of India. मेरे को ad अगर छपवाना है, one option is I directly go to the Times of India office if they allow me and I tell that I want this ad, etc., etc., that is advertising. When I'm making directly payment to Times of India, I will deduct 194C. But suppose I'm not directly going and making a payment to Times of India, I am going to an advertising agency. I want कि मेरे को Times of India में on this date of this particular size का I want an ad. They said okay. I made them a payment of 2 lakhs. ठीक है. But that advertising agency will contact Times of India and then they made a payment of say 1,50,000 to Times of India. ठीक है. यहाँ पे clarity है. अब this A Limited making payment to advertising agency of 2 lakhs, they will deduct the TDS at the rate of 1% or 2% as the case may be of advertising agency. Suppose advertising agency is a company, they will deduct the tax at 2%. If an advertising agency is a sole proprietor, they will deduct the tax at 1%. Simple, correct? Now, when advertising agency is making payments to Times of India, will it be when advertising agency is making payments to Times of India, will it be section 194C? The answer is no. Because that is not a payment of advertisement where I am getting the advertising. As an agency is just acting as a middleman who is passing the person. That person is not making payment of pure advertising because he is not getting the advertising done. Okay. But the question comes whether this 50,000 which a person has kept with him, whether this is a commission or a discount, which will attract 194H, which will attract 194H, whether this is a commission in a way which Times of India has paid one advertising agency. कि चलो आप मेरे पास काम लेके आए हो, आप 50,000 रख लो. You've got the work of advertising, you keep 50,000. Whether it is the case, the answer is no. This is what is given as a circular clarification when I'll move you to the left-hand side, which says that this 50,000 is a spread, is a profit which advertising agency kept. We cannot say or term it as a commission in between Times of India and advertising agency and then Times of India has to deduct it. No, this is necessarily not a commission and hence this would not either require 194C or 194H. This 50,000 I'm talking about. So this is what this particular circular has typically tried to address also. You can give it a read once. Meanwhile, I'll take you to illustration 5 of Moon TV. Moon TV, a television channel, made payment of 50 lakhs to a production house for a production of program for telecasting as per the specifications given by channel. The copyright of the program is also transferred to Moon TV. Would such payment liable for tax deduction at source under 194C? The answer is yes. Production of programs comes under the definition of work contract. Also examine whether the provisions of tax deduction at source under 194C would be attracted if the payment was made by Moon TV for acquisition of telecasting rights of the content already produced. Then you will say no. Why? Because then that is just a payment for copyright. It will not attract 194C. It will not attract 194C because it's just a purchase of copyright and purchase of copyright is not a work contract. उसने मेरे लिए काम नहीं किया मेरी specifications के according. I will not make it 194C. Guys, एक और चीज remember, if the question talks about whether this particular section covers TDS under 194C or not, simple. You will restrict your answer to whether it is covered under 194C or not. Don't go over smart and tell कि नहीं 194C तो नहीं लगेगा, 194H or 194J would be applicable. No. If they've asked whether 194C is applicable or not, just say yes, it is applicable or no, it is not applicable. Don't say no, it is not applicable, but it might be applicable under 194J. Why you are taking that risk of giving even a slightest of wrong answer? If question asked, this is applicable or not, just stick your answer to that. Okay? So ये तीनों examples which was taken in relation to the world of advertising and productions of programs, I hope they are clear. quickly go through it, and if you have any doubt, please ask between 194C and 194H. Think about any doubt which you have, and don't worry, just read, read, read. And covering that only, Vishali, your answer is done. Kiran, Abba, Kiran, 194H may say, other than, even I'm also telling deductor is a person other than individual and HF, but individual and HF would be covered if they have turnover in the preceding year of more than 1 crore and gross receipts of more than 50 lakhs, then they are eligible deductor. See, the person who's getting the main advertising done, that person has to deduct TDS under 194C. Vishali, in your case also, if I am making payment, who is making the payment? Ultimately, advertising kharcha kiska hai? That person would deduct TDS under 194C. Ritu, अगर अब सपोज करो यू आई एम मेकिंग पेमेंट टू एडवर्टाइजिंग एजेंसी 194C, ठीक है, एडवर्टाइजिंग, अब एडवर्टाइजिंग एजेंसी अगर वो कोई एड बनवाती है प्रोडक्शन हाउस से, देन दे आर डिडक्टिंग टैक्स ऑन अ प्रोडक्शन ऑफ अ एड, दैट इज अगेन ऑल्सो 194C for broadcasting, agar, because that involves requirements, specifications, so that is again also 194C. But you have to see transaction by transaction कि दो लोगों में क्या transaction है. What is the nature of transaction between deductor and deducting? Nancy, if someone has already made a program, ठीक है, एक program already ready है, because production houses they generally make program and then they go to channels कि हाँ channels इसको खरीद ले and then they telecast it, ठीक है. When program is already made, मेरे और आप में work contract क्या हुआ? Work contract is an element where are some specifications provided or some need is provided or when need is generated, right? That is work contract. But when already, like I gave an example of sofa, when the sofa is already ready, I'm purchasing it. There is a purchase of a transaction, not a payment for that is a payment made for purchase, not a payment made for a work contract service. Correct? So similarly, when program is already ready, I am making just payment to get the copyright for it. That's it for purchase of copyright. So 194C is not attracted. But when a program gets ready as per the specification, as per the specifications or the requirements or the need, etc., etc., then 194C comes. Okay. Now I will quickly take you to section 194J because अगर ये तीनों साथ में हो, that is much, much, much better. Then I will come to 194 IIB. Don't worry. 194J पहले करेंगे हम. Fees for professional or technical services. I have a very bad throat today. So if I'm making payment for professional or technical services, guys, that would be covered under section 194J. Again, few points to remember here. यहाँ पे guys only fees for professional or technical services नहीं है. These particular section includes 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of different payments. If that payments are made, 194J would be attracted. Definitely fees, if any payment is made for professional services, 194J would be attracted. Any payment made for technical services, 194J would be attracted. Any payment made to directors remuneration, or for directors remuneration, 194J attracted. Any payment made for royalty, 194J attracted. Any payment made for non-compete fees, 194J is attracted. Professional services, technical services, directors remuneration, other अगर वो director employee नहीं है, because if the director is an employee, you will deduct tax under 192 because employer-employee relationship salary. When a director is not an employee, he is a non-executive employee, works on a board meeting to board meeting basis or a project to project basis, you make payment of director remuneration. Then 194J. Royalty. कोई भी royalty किसी चीज के लिए भी दिए. Remember we did it in our class, deduction class also. You're making royalty for books, you're making royalty for any patent, you are making royalty for any formula, you're paying royalty for any even distributors कौन, ये जो films खरीदते हैं from the production house, they make payment, distributors make payment to the production companies for purchasing the rights for the film. That is also royalty. Non-compete fees. Non-compete fees क्या होता है? Suppose X and Y both are lawyer. X made payment to Y that you will not work, not compete with me in this particular area. Where I have my practice, you will not compete with me in that particular area. So that is a non-compete fees paid by X to Y to not compete, as in make a competition with him. So that non-compete fees पे भी 194J would be attracted. So what types of payments are generally covered? Most of the people have a impression that only payments like professional and technical services there. But no, my friends, there are different types of payment, which includes royalty also, which includes non-compete fees also, and which includes director remuneration also. ठीक है, नाउ मैम, ठीक है, समझ आ गया. प्रोफेशनल टेक्निकल रॉयल्टी आपने समझा दिया. नॉन कॉम्पिटिटिव क्लियर, डायरेक्टर रेम्युनरेशन इज क्लियर. बट मैम प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज में व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज? गाइस, प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज यहाँ पे अपनी मर्जी से नहीं लेना. प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज व्हाट यू हैव स्टडीड अंडर 44AA नोटिफाइड प्रोफेशंस, what you have studied, other professions which are notified for the purpose of 44AA, वहां पे notified professions, and what professions which are specifically given under 194J. Only if the payments are made to these people would be covered under fees for professional services. If the payment is made to other than these people, it will not be covered under professional services. मतलब वो profession जो 44AA में, if they are notified separately under 44AA, or if they are specifically mentioned under 194J, all of them together would come to the meaning of fees for professional services, and if payment made to them would only be covered under fees for professional services. कौन से? When the payment is made to legal, or I should say for legal, medical, engineering, architectural profession, accountancy, technical consultancy, interior decoration, or advertising of such other interior decoration or advertising of such other profession as is notified by CBDT. Then notified कौन से 44AA में? Authorized representative, film artist, company secretary, and information technology. अगर इन सब के services के लिए I'm making payment, I will tax deduct tax under 194J. And 194J में और कौन से प्रोफेशन नोटिफाइड है? प्रोफेशन इन रिलेशन टू स्पोर्ट्स. स्पोर्ट्स में कौन? स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन, एम्पायर्स, कोचेस, फिजिशियंस, इवेंट मैनेजर्स, कमेंटेटर्स, referees also as in anchors, sports columnists, all of them are covered under 194J. So if I'm making payment to any of them, TDS would be deducted under 194J. अब फॉर एग्जाम्पल वही वाला मेरा एग्जाम्पल, I am making or Mr. A is making payment to an advertising agency. For that is for the pure purpose of advertising, he will deduct TDS under 194C. When advertising agency is making payment to any model, say, or any actor, they will deduct the TDS under 194J. They will deduct the TDS under 194J. I am making payment to a normal accountant in the sense of a person who's a graduate to keep my accounts. I will deduct TDS under 194C. But if I make a payment to chartered accountant for tax audit, for doing my books, etc., I will deduct TDS under 194J. Similarly, sports person are specifically notified under 194J. So suppose whatever BCCI pays to the coaches, not as a remuneration of an employee, but on general, on contract to contract basis, they will deduct TDS under 194J. Whatever the ICCI paid to the empires, they will deduct the TDS under 194J. ठीक है, cheer leaders guys इसमें नहीं है, ठीक है. But yes, event management company को I'm making payment 194J. Next is मैम फी फॉर टेक्निकल सर्विसेज भी थोड़ा सा डिटेल में समझाओ कि टेक्निकल सर्विसेज में these items are used: managerial services, any fees paid for technical services, any fee paid for consultancy, all of these or provision of services of technical or other personnel. इसको सिंपल से ऐसे समझेंगे, technical services mean if I am making a payment to someone for using his expertise or knowledge or skill for any managerial, technical or consultancy related task. You go to Big Four for advisory. Okay, I'm getting into this transaction. Please advise me. Please consult me. What should I do? That is fees for technical services. You will deduct the TDS under 194J. I am going to do a survey, a market survey. I need someone's help to get that survey done. That is a technical service. I will deduct TDS under 194J. I'm starting a project. I want to get a feasibility report of it. I want to get a feasibility report of it, ki haan, whether the project in this particular area would be feasible or not. I will again hire a company. That is 194J. Anyone providing me any sort of technical help, any sort of managerial help, any sort of consultancy, and I'm making payment for that, that is called technical services. At this level, it is more than enough to understand, because when you will go to final, there would be certain case laws, there would be certain circulars for you to understand in depth. But for right now, any sort of expert comment. अब मैं अगर consultancy ले रही हूँ guys, I will not take it from someone going on a road. I will go to a person who has that expertise on it, has that knowledge on it. That person obviously would charge a fee, and I would make that payment under fees for technical services, and I will deduct TDS under 194G for that. Okay. So coming to the chart here, 194J attracts fees for professional, technical. I hope it is clear now. Professional services, technical services, non-compete, fees, royalty, and director's remuneration. सारे के सारे इसी में आएंगे, ठीक है. इसको कॉमनली प्रोफेशनल कहते हैं, बट all of that would be covered. Who would deduct the TDS? Exactly same person who are required to deduct TDS under 194A, 194H, 194C. Yani all person would deduct TDS except individual and HUF. and individual and HF को deduct TDS only if they have that turnover वाला thing in the preceding year. मैं इसको ऐसे बोल रही हूँ, ठीक है? Then यहाँ पे the most interesting things are the किसका TDS कटना है? Only the resident person. So if I am making payment to Virat Kohli, who's a resident in India, I will deduct TDS under 194J. But if I'm making payment to Brett Lee, he is not a resident in India, I will not deduct TDS under 194J. So your section required hoga? Yes, but not 194J. Now, next is the rate. Rates, my friend, is very interesting here. जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारा litigation होता है. A lot of litigation happens at a lot of higher level. Let's understand the rates. The rates are प्रोफेशनल को जब पेमेंट हो रहा है इट इज 10%, प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज के लिए 10%, टेक्निकल सर्विसेज के लिए 2%. सो इफ आई एम मेकिंग पेमेंट फॉर प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज आई विल डिडक्ट द रेट TDS at the rate of 10%. If I'm making payment for technical services, I will deduct the rate at TDS at the rate of 2%. And or let's write it in a way, not like this. Let's write it. The rate is 10% under 194J, except for the following where the rate is 2%. When I am making payment for technical services, the rate is 2%. When I am making payment for calls to call centers भी technical support दे रहे हैं मेरे को of managerial work of HR, that is 2%. When I am making payment for royalty for cinematographic films, then it is 2%. Royalty in general, किसी author को payment दे रही royalty का, I will deduct tax at 10%. But I'm making royalty to payment to the production company for giving me rights for the films. I will deduct the tax at the rate of 2%. I will deduct tax at the rate of 2%. The general rate is 10%. Otherwise, in तीनों पे 2%. Royalty मैम patents को patent के लिए दे दो 2%. Ma'am, non-compete fees 10%. Ma'am, director's remuneration 10%. So the rate in general for 194J is 10%, except technical services, call centers payment, and royalty for films, it is 2%. Now, interesting part here is the threshold. What is the threshold limit, guys? 30,000 each. Matlab, if I'm making payment to Mr. A for professional services, 30,000 is the limit. If I'm making payment to Mr. A for technical services, 30,000 is the limit. If I'm making payment to Mr. A for non-compete service fees, 30,000 is the limit. So 30 different limit hai, but for no limit is there for director remuneration. So even if I'm making director remuneration ka payment for even 10 rupees also, I will deduct the TDS at the rate of 10%. No limit for director remuneration. TDS has to be deducted at the time of credit or payment, whichever is earlier. वो वाला line credit और payment वाला merge होते होते इधर आ गया, ठीक है? So for example, Mr. X and Mr. A has a lot of transaction. S makes a payment to A. A is a, let's say A is a chartered accountant, okay? He's making payment to A for chartered accountant service. So he'll make an account A professional services account, okay? He's making A for director's remuneration also. He'll make a separate A director remuneration account. Now, if suppose I'm making payment to A for professional services, अब A को professional services के लिए पहले 10,000 दिए, I will not deduct the TDS. Then I made a payment of 15,000, I will not deduct the TDS, 30,000 is the limit. Then I again made a payment of 10,000, will I deduct the TDS? Yes, it is crossed 30,000, the tax would be deducted. But यहाँ पे एक as a director remuneration, even if 1,000 rupees goes, I have to deduct the TDS at the rate of 10%. एक ही बंदा है, but two different accounts are made for the purpose of 194J in the books of X, so that 30-30 वाला limit would be carefully done. Problem क्या है guys? Technical services में भी consultancy services लिखा हुआ है and professional services की definition में भी technical consultancy word लिखा हुआ है. So isn't it confusing? Technical services के मीनिंग में कंसल्टेंसी सर्विसेज है एंड प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज के मीनिंग में टेक्निकल कंसल्टेंसी है. Whenever someone is coming for technical consultancy, एंड टेक्निकल से मेरा मतलब समथिंग रिलेटेड टू साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं होता. टेक्निकल मतलब कहीं पे भी when knowledge is required or when expertise is required. ठीक है. So it is always said it is better to deduct TDS at the rate of 10%. Why? Because higher TDS here, higher rate of TDS here, even if as per your interpretation it is coming under the meaning of FTS, which is fee for technical services. Still, I would suggest to deduct the TDS under technical consultancy, which is coming under the meaning of professional services, so that any notice of the government can be or from the department can be avoided. ठीक है. सो 2% वाला रेट लगाने पे रिस्क तो है, नो डाउट ऑन दैट. नाउ 30 वाला लिमिट इज क्लियर, 2% वाला लिमिट इज पॉइंट इज क्लियर. लास्ट पॉइंट हियर, लास्ट नहीं, 2-3 पॉइंट्स और. If I talk from individual and HF perspective, if I talk from individual and HF perspective, if I talk from individual and HF perspective, guys, individual डायरेक्ट रेम्यूनरेशन की पेमेंट क्यों करेगा, राइट? बिकॉज वो तो कंपनी है नहीं, कंपनीज में डायरेक्टेड होते हैं, तो डेफिनेटली इंडिविजुअल एंड HF डज नॉट हैव एनी डायरेक्ट रेम्यूनरेशन, but also they are exempt from making tax deduction on royalties and non-compete fees. They do not have to make tax deduction on royalty and non-compete. So बचा क्या? Only professional and technical services. So individual and HF would deduct TDS only on professional and technical services. Please mark this point as important. Second point which you have to remember is no personal payments or no personal purpose payments would attract TDS. So individual and HF making payments for any personal purpose, even if they have that requisite turnover, no TDS is required to be deducted. Even if they have that requisite turnover, no TDS is required to be deducted. For example, I am taking a lawyer services for my business. कोई business dispute है client के साथ, lawyer services उसके लिए ली. I will deduct the TDS provided I have a turnover in the preceding year. Correct? Yes. I am taking lawyer services for a family dispute. Professional services है, but I will not deduct the TDS because it's a personal purpose. Similarly, I'm taking interior decorator services for my house design. I will not deduct 194J. I will not deduct tax under 194J. So, but if I'm taking interior decorator services for my office design, I will deduct 194J. So personal purpose payments are not covered for individual and HF. So there are only two sections which do not cover personal purpose. One is 194C and one is 194J. Last point under 194J, guys, is some clarification which has come through circulars, etc. So there are two circulars applicable at your case. One is royalty, one is related to royalty, and one is related to hospitals. इन दोनों को समझाने के लिए थोड़ा सा बैक जाते हैं. सबसे पहले let's understand what is the circular in relation to computer software. See, guys, whenever you purchase computer softwares, that purchase amount is considered as royalty, because computer software में क्या है? They are giving you the right. They are giving you the software, and selling of software is equal to making payment of royalty. Unless and until that computer software is already installed in an hardware that is already installed in computer, तब आप उसमें वो सॉफ्टवेयर को रॉयल्टी नहीं मानते. बट अदरवाइज इफ यू परचेजिंग एनी कंप्यूटर सॉफ्टवेयर इन स्टैंड अलोन बेसिस, द पेमेंट मेड फॉर दैट इज कंसिडर्ड टू बी रॉयल्टी. The payment made for that is considered to be royalty. But one exception is given. Suppose the exception is of subsequent sale. Suppose the company Alpha Limited gave all the computer softwares to a middleman, say A. A को उन्होंने सॉफ्टवेयर दे दिए, ठीक है. A obviously would deduct the payment since these computer softwares are equivalent to royalty, and A would deduct the TDS on such payment, right? Now, A without any modification is giving that software to B. A is the middleman. He's the middleman. He's without any modification is giving that software to B. Now, naturally, B is purchasing the software. They will say that royalty has to be deducted under section 194J. But they have given as an exception that if one person is purchasing software and then he's selling it to another person, it is a subsequent sale without any modification, then no TDS is required to be deducted. By B, if the software is sold without modification, even if it is a royalty, no TDS would be deducted by B if the software is sold without modification. And A files a declaration that yes, I deducted the TDS when it was required. Okay? This is one clarification which came from the department. एक बार इसे अच्छे से पढ़ोगे, you will get to know it. Last is TPA related. Then I will give you a break. Don't worry. Last is TPA related. TPA क्या होता है? Third party investor. Probably you might not have an idea. Let me give you an example of it. Guys, payment made to doctors. मेडिकल पर्पस के लिए पेमेंट हो रहा है, डेफिनेटली 194J आएगा. पेमेंट मेड टू हॉस्पिटल 194J डेफिनेटली आएगा. बट when payments are made for personal purpose, 194J नहीं आएगा. Suppose I'm getting my employee treated in an hospital, I'm making payment to hospital, it's for medical purpose, I will deduct tax under 194J. But if I'm making hospital payment for my personal purpose, I will not deduct tax under 194J. अब कभी कभार गाइस क्या होता है, ठीक है, इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज होते हैं, हम सबका इंश्योरेंस होता है, मेडिकल ट्रीटमेंट, राइट. इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज होती है. सो दे हैव थर्ड पार्टी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर TPA फॉर सेटलिंग ऑल द क्लेम्स, बिकॉज इंश्योरेंस कंपनी के पास इतना टाइम नहीं है कि वो क्लेम्स देखे कि ऑल द ट्रीटमेंट वाज डन राइटली, अमाउंट डिस्चार्ज राइटली. सो दे कीप अ थर्ड पार्टी टू एडमिनिस्टर ऑल दीज एक्सपेंसेस, ठीक है. So when a person has an insurance policy, let's say Mr. X, and that person gets admits here in the hospital. So naturally, when X is making payment to hospital, you will say that 194J is not deducted, ma'am, because it is for personal purpose. We all agree on that. Okay? But suppose Mr. X has insurance, ठीक है, मेडिकल इंश्योरेंस है. वो इंश्योरेंस कंपनी को बोलेंगे कि आप हॉस्पिटल को पैसा दो माय ट्रीटमेंट का. They will say to the insurance company that pay the hospital expense, pay for my hospital expense since I have the insurance, correct? So who will pay? The TPA would pay to the hospital. Now the clarification comes whether this TPA has to deduct TDS under 194J or not. The answer came as yes. The answer came as yes. All the payments which are made by TPA to the hospital are covered under payments in relation to medical services, and hence TDS is required to be deducted. यहाँ पे हम ये नहीं देखेंगे कि वो personal purpose हो रहा है किसी का या नहीं है. We will see the transaction between TPA and hospital, and TPA are required to deduct tax under 10% if the bill is more than of 30,000. ठीक है. So ये दो technically थोड़े से strong circulars है. Please go through it and let me know if something else is required to be explained again. किरण क्या नहीं समझ आया? डिग्री सी 194J में जो सर्विसेज है नेंशी, only that professional services would be included for the purpose of 194J. अब suppose I'm making payment for someone who is a teacher, I will not deduct tax under 194J because professional services में वो नहीं included, right? or probably to an artist who is a painter, I will not deduct tax under 194J because that person is not included under the services or professional services. तो उसका 194C में आपको डिडक्ट हो सकता है बट नॉट 194J. Whether an individual HF having turnover of more than 1 crore in the preceding year required to deduct tax on royalty? No, they're excluded. The individual and HF only have to deduct tax on two things, which is professional services and technical services. And अगर वो भी personal purpose के लिए, no requirement to deduct tax. So, guys, first of all, royalty में computer software का if payment is done, that covers under royalty. Please listen carefully, that it is covered under the meaning of royalty. So whenever you're purchasing a computer software from anyone, except in already installed in hardware, except for those cases, you have to deduct payment under 194J because that is a royalty if you're not an individual HF, okay? That is a royalty. That is clear? Clear. Now, इसको A limited कर देते और easy करें. Now, Alpha Limited sold all the softwares to A Limited. A Limited will make subsequent sales. Now, when Alpha Limited sold the softwares to A Limited paid the payment of royalty because the payment for software होता है, that is payment for royalty. A Limited would have deducted TDS of Alpha Limited at the rate of 10%. Yes. Now, A Limited is a middleman. He will make subsequent sales to other people. इन्होंने bulk में ले लिए, correct? He will make subsequent sales to other people. Now, when that subsequent sale is done, naturally the other person is making payment of royalty to A Limited now. Now the transaction is between A Limited and B. B is making payment of royalty because for that purchase of computer software, the amount which is paid is royalty. Okay? Technically, and let's make it B Limited also. B Limited making payment to A Limited for that computer software is royalty, yes. But a clarification came that if a person is subsequently selling software without modification, the person who's purchasing the software may not have to deduct tax if A Limited tells that I have not modified it. I have deducted the tax when I purchased it, when I got those softwares, and give this declaration, then tax deduction at source is not required by B Limited. Okay, and he has to obviously give his span about it. So this is what the point 8 says. Threshold limit, Manohar, 30,000 for each. 30,000. I give an example also. I made a payment of 10,000 for professional services. I will not deduct the TDS. I made again payment of 15,000 for professional services. I will not deduct the TDS. Then if I made another payment of 15,000 for professional services, I will deduct the TDS on the entire amount because now it has crossed 30,000 in aggregate. So aggregate, single bill, both. Okay, so guys, 194C, H and J we did. All of the three are very important section. All of the three are sort of interrelated because C में कहीं कहीं J का reference है, J में C का reference है. So that I hope is clear. So let's take a quick break and let's come back in 10 minutes. Go eat something and we'll be back in 10 minutes, okay? Okay, guys, welcome back. Sorry, it took sort of time. एडवांस अकाउंट क्लास यार गाइस कुछ लिखते हो प्लीज उसको सेंटेंस लिखा करो सो दैट आई कैन रिलेट See, Manohar, ultimately, difference between professional and technical services is technical involves in general consultancy, managerial, or any just of expertise, knowledge, or maybe technological help. Someone is providing a so technological expertise or technological support to your company that comes under technical services. Some anything which is customized to your need and use or some specific surveys, some specific reports, some specific feasibilities tests, some specific management system or HR recruitment service, all of that comes under your technical services. But professional services, on the other hand, are the only the ones which are listed here. Account, medical, legal, architect, engineering, company secretary, accountants, all of those which are the ones which are just listed name by name which वो कौन सी है which are specified under 194 separately, which are the sports related one, which are there in the 44AA and which are notified under 44AA. Not all of them, okay? So in general, अब जैसे कोई आर्टिस्ट कोई ड्रॉ करता है पेंटर उसको वो even if he has that skills and diploma etc but still he will not be covered under 194J because artists are not covered there probably as an artist in the sense painter specifically is not covered there or teacher is not covered under 194J so that or a person who's providing coaching is not covered under 194J the TDS would not be attracted under 194J for that purpose. But हाँ technical consultancy is written under 194J. Technical meaning में consultancy भी written है. So there is definitely a confusion. There is a lot of case laws on it. But at this stage, I would request कि अगर कुछ technical consultancy related कुछ आते do not take it consultancy or technical services. Take it technical consultancy given under professional services to understand that. Okay. Rito, I give an example of models who are working for advertising. That is covered under 194J, but someone getting advertising done for that particular work, that is 194C. No, Mohammed, for calculating income for a person other than your okay, I'll say for calculating income of a person for the purpose of section 192, you will only deduct loss of house property. No other loss has to be deducted. No business loss has to be considered. Other sources may very rare the loss comes. No other loss has to be considered. No capital gain. See, loss has to be considered. Whatever they tell, only that has to be taken up. और कोई डाउट है guys? बढ़े आगे? Because the section which we are now picking up is something related to what we have now understood. Ma'am, meaning we are coming to section 194M, guys. सेक्शन 194M. सेक्शन 194M को समझने का सबसे easiest way है guys to first have a clarity on section 194C, section 194H and section 194J. If I come on section 194M and read the heading of it, section 194M covers payments by individual or HUF. So यानी अगर कोई कंपनी पेमेंट कर रही है 194M is not for them. For contract work, commission, brokerage, and fees for professional services. Contract, commission, brokerage, and fees for professional services. अब बोलोगे कि मैम ये तो वही सेक्शन है which we studied 194C. 194H and 194J. And J में भी यहाँ पे सिर्फ प्रोफेशनल सर्विसेज कवर्ड है, टेक्निकल नॉन कॉम्पीट एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा नहीं है. ओके, सो व्हाट दिस 194M covers? Let's make a list of what is not covered under 194C, 194H and 194M, J, from individual perspective or HUF perspective. कौन कौन से 194C में नहीं आते? इंडिविजुअल एंड HUF एक तो जनरल है गाइस. Individual and HUF who do not have the turnover in the preceding year of more than 1 crore or gross receipts of more than 50 lakhs in case of profession in preceding year. ये तो covered ही नहीं है individual HUF, right? These individuals HUF are not covered under 194C, 194H, 194J. कहने का मतलब if someone have a salary, is a salaried employed, he's not covered under C, H, J anyhow. Correct? Because even if he has salaries in lakhs and crores, but he does not have a business and business nahi hai, to turnover criteria nahi hai. Or someone who has a business but does not have the requisite turnover of more than 1 crore or gross receipts of more than 50 lakhs. Correct? ये individual and HUF covered nahi hai. Also guys, C और J में वो वाले individual और HUF भी तो covered नहीं है who make payments for personal purpose. Or I should say, those payments are not covered which are for personal purpose, correct? 194H में personal purpose है. So now suppose if suppose I'm a salaried individual, or let's suppose I'm not a salaried individual, I'm a person who has a turnover of 50 crores in the preceding year. I made a catering arrangement for a family function. And उसके लिए I paid the caterers in lakhs, 10 lakhs, say, to the caterer. Now, look at the volume of the transaction or the quantum of the transaction. Payment in the economy is happening of 10 lakhs, but just because it was not covered under C because of the personal purpose, it got out of the scope of TDS, right? Similarly, I'm making payment to lawyers, and lawyers takes fees in lakhs and lakhs. But sometimes, since the payment is for personal purpose, it is out of the scope. But suppose I'm a salaried individual, I am purchasing house, I purchase a house of 2 crores. I'm making brokerage payment of 4 lakhs, but I am not deducting the tax because I do not have the turnover. I do not have the business, right? So ऐसे क्या हो रहा था? Government को नुकसान हो रहा था. Government was facing problem because financial transactions of huge volumes were happening in the economy, but they were out of the scope of TDS. Out of the scope of TDS. Reason can be personal purpose, or reason can be they did not want people to be burdened because of the TDS compliances. Right? अब उन सबको कवर करने के लिए एक कॉमन सेक्शन आया, which is section 194M, where all those types of payments which are not covered under section 194C, H or J because of them being either personal purpose for C or J, or for them being of an individual not having that requisite turnover in the preceding years, would now be covered under 194M. Would now be covered under 194M. So ये जो applicable person है ना, non-applicable payments of 194C, H and J, or non-applicable deductors of 194C, H and J are now covered under 194M. Are now covered under 194M. So eligible deductor clear हुआ, types of payment clear हुआ, and J में भी guys only professional services, not technical. ठीक है? All of that would be covered under 194M. Clear? Reason लाने का क्या हुआ? But मैम एक तरीके से तो फिर भी आप burden तो डाल रहे हो ना tax compliances का. A person has to obtain tax, have to deduct tax, have to file the return, have to issue the certificate, etc., etc. So they came up with the solution कि अब एक salaried individual के पास इतना time नहीं है ना that he will, if he is making personal purpose payment and it is crossing a certain limit, he should deduct the tax under 194M and then file the return quarterly, etc. He does not have that much time. So what they did, 194M and other sections alike They are sections which do not require tandem. So if you are a deductor, I told you in the first class, to deduct tax, you require TAN. All the TDS compliances you will do through that common TAN, right? As a deductor, you need a TAN. But since people who are covered under section like 194M, 194IB, which we'll do today, you will see that they do not require TAN to deduct the tax. वो tax deduct करेंगे सिर्फ PAN basis पे, and they will file one return, only one return for that particular type of payment or for that particular type of limit, which would be a return, or it should say, which would be a challan cum return form. They will not wait for quarter to end and then file the return. They will file one challan. इसमें सारी details होंगी of the transactions, and that would be considered as returned also. And that's it. Their task is done. And then they will deposit the tax, and that's it. And this is to be done within 30 days from the end of the month in which tax is deducted. Okay, so coming to the concept, you have to understand, guys, the concept of TDS. You have to understand the clarity on C, H, and J to understand 194M किस पे applicable होगा. And अब अगर applicable हो गया, if it is applicable, then TDS compliances का burden ना पड़े. Only for that, they have said that, okay, we don't want you to be overburdened with compliances. We'll give you a shortcut route. Don't apply for TAN, just deduct tax, file one form, which would be a challan also and a return also in that form, and that's it. We are least bothered. Okay? So, किसी को कोई problem है of seeing who is covered under 194M and who is not covered under 194M? I'm so sorry. I think screen is not visible. So sorry. Who is covered under 194M and who is not covered under 194M? So sorry, guys. एक बारी चेक करो. तो 194 CHJ जिन पे applicable नहीं होता, on those people on who were not an eligible deductor under 194 CHJ, or the payments are not covered under C and J because of it being personal, all of that would be covered under 194M. So who would be the eligible deductor under 194M? The person who is not covered under CHJ because of them not having the turnovers, or because of them having the turnovers but making payments for personal purpose. Guys, चले आगे, क्लैरिटी हो गई. टेक्निकल सर्विसेज 194M में कवर्ड नहीं है. Only professional services are covered under 194M. Yes, Komal, it is out of the syllabus now. Guys, please class पे focus करो. Is it clear? Shall I move ahead? I'm sorry, the screen was not shared. Is it clear? Can you give me a green signal? I already इतने पे ही maximum रहा है हमेशा. Forms पे आएंगे अभी बाद में. Okay. So now, when these person are making payment or the personal purpose wala payment is done, then the TDS is required to be deducted under 194M. Who would be the deductee in this case? Any resident person. Any resident person. Rate, guys. Rate here is 5%. Rate here is 5%. And the most technical and nice part is the threshold. Threshold here is, guys, 50 lakhs per annum when the payment is made to a single person of more than 50 lakhs per annum, including all these three types of payment. All the three types of payment, then you have to deduct the TDS. See, quantum kitna rakha hai? 50 lakhs per annum. So suppose, and these are basically to cover all those people who are making high amount of payments. Suppose I am a person who has a turnover of more than 50 crores in the previous year. Okay? But I'm making this personal purpose payment. These are the payments made for personal purpose. One is brokerage to Mr. A of 5 lakhs. Interior decoration payment to Mr. A of 30 lakhs. And ये दोनों मिस्टर ए को हो रही है, ठीक है? And lawyer fees of 15 lakhs. Medical cosmetic fees of 10 lakhs. Lawyer fees is paid to Mr. B. And medical fees is paid to Mr. Dr. C. And now tell me whether which section would be applicable. All these payments are for personal purpose. Tell your brokerage to Mr. A. First of all, you have to see C, H, and J, whether that are applicable or not. H is applicable? Yes, 194 H is applicable because turnover more than 1 crore है, brokerage है. Yes. Personal purpose कहीं नहीं लिखा. Interior decorator, 30 lakhs. Okay. C में, J में not included. Why? Personal purpose. 15 lakhs lawyer को to Mr. B. Not included in again 194J. ठीक है. And 10 lakh doctor को not included in 194J. Yes, the payment is more than 50 lakhs for different services of 194J or professional services, but they're not to a single person. They are not to a single person. So even if the amount is more, but 194M would not be tracked. Why? Because the limit is per person for all three types of payment, it should cross 50 lakhs. But now let's suppose उन्होंने दूसरा पेमेंट किया to Mr. A for architect service. Okay? And he made a payment of 25 lakhs. Now the person would deduct TDS under 194M for Mr. A on 30 and 25 lakhs because now the payment has crossed 50 lakhs per annum per payee for all these three types of payments. For all these three types of payment, and hence 194M would be attracted for the payments made to Mr. A. Got it? Is it clear? Fees for technical services is not covered under 194M. Only professional services are covered. Vishali, 194M clear हुआ? अगर नहीं आ रहा वो JHC में तो नहीं आ रहा. It's not the problem. It's not a thing to take care of. पहले भी तो नहीं आ रहा था. Just because now the section is just covering huge volume of transactions, not just small payments, huge volume of transactions. ठीक है? Got it, guys? Section 194M is clear. Is it clear? So, अगर एक quick यहाँ पे illustration है, I'll take just one part of it. Time is credit or payment, whichever is earlier. Let's take a case of Satish. Satish is a salaried individual. Payment of brokerage for buying a residential house in March 24 for 51 lakhs. 194 CH me is not covered because he's a salaried individual. He will deduct the TDS under 194M at 5%. Got it? Let's take an example of Dheeraj, a pensioner, salaried person. Contract payment made between October to November for reconstruction of residential house, 48 lakhs. Yes, if that person would have been having a turnover of more than 1 crore, then also he would not have been covered under 194C. Why? Because residential house है, and ये तो pensioner है, residential house है, but 50 लाख से कम है, तो he no 194C, no 194M for Dheeraj. Got it, guys? Now let's move to the next section. Rama, you have to tell me what is the query. So again, quickly, 194M would be applicable to those people who are not covered under C, H, or J, or on those transactions that are not covered under C and J because of them being of personal purpose. ठीक है, तो वो जो उधर कवर नहीं है वो इधर कवर हो जाएंगे. इवन इफ आई हैव अ टर्नओवर ऑफ मोर देन 50 करोड़, बट अगर मेरी पर्सनल पर्पस ट्रांजैक्शन है वो सी और जे में नहीं आएंगी, तो वो एम में आ जाएंगी. Or if I'm a salaried individual not having any turnover, so anyway I'm not covered under C, H, and J, then it would be covered under M. The limit is more than 50 lakhs per person, as in the per person per pay, and that pay is a resident person. अगर तीनों types of transactions मिला के भी it is more than 50 lakhs during a year, I will deduct the tax at the rate of 5%. Got it? Chalo. Now, Rama, is it clear now? Thank you for the green signal, Shruti. Okay. So now let's move to the next part, which is C, H, and J clear. Now we'll move to 194I. I'm not going in the flow because I'm taking all those things together so that it can be clear to you. $194I is for rent. Rent, guys, rent. So rent क्या होता है, guys? When you are using someone's asset for a particular period, and that can be used by an agreement of rental agreement, lease agreement, sublease agreement, tenancy agreement, whatever name you want to call, that amount of rent which you're making, which you're paying for using of an asset as per the agreement, that might attract TDS under 194I. So next section which you have to write is 194I TDS on rent. वो रेंट आप लैंड के लिए दो, बिल्डिंग के लिए दो, कमर्शियल हो, रेजिडेंशियल हो, प्रोबेबली फैक्ट्री हो, गोडाउन हो, कोई फर्नीचर हो, कोई प्लांट एंड मशीनरी हो, कोई फिटिंग्स हो, एनीथिंग, एवरीथिंग वुड बी इंक्लूडेड अंडर 194I. सो 194I के लिए गाइस, let's write it here. 194I, which is TDS on rent. Here again also all person would be included except individual and HUF. Except individual and HUF. And individual and HUF would only be included if they have the turnover in the preceding year of more than 1 crore in case of business or more than 50 lakhs in case of profession. TDS किसका काटोगे when you're making payment for resident person to a resident person for rent purpose. TDS rate, guys, here it is very interesting rate. I'll come to the rate also, but limit is 2,40,000. And the tax has to be deducted at the time of payment or credit, whichever is earlier. 2,40,000 per annum. Rate is that when rent is given for plant and machinery, then the TDS rate is 2%. When rent is given for the purpose of land, building, furniture, or anything except plant and machinery, the rate is 10%. So suppose I am giving rent to a person. Okay. I'm giving a rent to a person for plant and machinery. I'm giving him 2,50,000 ka rent during the year. The TDS would be deducted at the rate of 2%, at the rate of 2% because वो plant and machinery के लिए rent is given. So on 250, the TDS will be deducted at the rate of 2%, 5,000. ठीक? Simple. कोई issue नहीं है. I'm paying someone a rent of building, residential house. I'm a person having turnover of more than 1 crore in the preceding year. I will deduct the tax if the rent is more than 2,40,000 per year. So 240, suppose monthly rent is 30,000. So I will deduct 10% from the monthly rent. कोई issue? कोई issue, guys? No problem. But issue अब कहाँ पे आएगा? Let's take an example where actually a problem comes. I'll take two examples with you and you have to tell me what is the tax. A Limited is making payment to Mr. Joy and Mrs. Joy. Mr. Joy and Mrs. Joy, each being the co-owner of a flat or say co-owner of a factory. A Limited is making payment to Mr. Joy and Mrs. Joy for godown, which is co-owned by Joy and Mrs. Joy. Okay? Now, the payment for rent is 4,20,000. The rent payment is 4,20,000. 210 goes into accounts of Mr. Joy and 210 goes into the account of Mrs. Joy. The question is whether A Limited has to deduct TDS on this 4,20,000. Whether A Limited has to deduct tax on this 4,20,000 for the rent payment made for godown. Think whether A Limited has to deduct tax on this 420 on the rental payment made for the godown, yes or no? Think yes, क्यों? Why? Mohammed says no, TDS okay. Why? दोनों के लिए answer. Why yes, why no? Whether A Limited would deduct tax at the rate, because the limit is 2,40,000. Whether A Limited will deduct tax or not. Okay, Sanjana, good attempt. Vishali says yes. Rama says yes. Okay, good attempt, guys. Very good. Very good, Mohammed. So Mohammed has actually given the correct answer because, guys, the limit, I always focus on the word per person per pay. The limit is not crossing 2,40,000. When I talk about the Joy's PAN account, PAN, उसके PAN पे rent कितना जा रहा है? 210. Similarly, Mrs. Joy के PAN पे rent कितना जा रहा है? 210. It is not crossing 240. So even if the rental payment is made to Mr. Joy, it is not more than 240. Rental payment made to Mrs. Joy, not more than 240. No TDS is required to be deducted. Okay, but let's take another example of A Limited again. Now, A Limited is making payment to Mr. Joy. Okay, but out of the payment of rent of say 5 lakhs, 2 lakh is for plant and machinery, which is there in the factory, and 3 lakh is for the rent for the factory, as in the building or the godown, whatever you want to say, for the factory. Okay. A Limited is making payment of 5 lakhs to Ms. Joy for rent, but that rent is divided as 2 lakh and 3 lakhs. Now, whether A Limited is required to deduct the tax? अब बताओ बताओ बताओ. When Omar says no. Mohammed, what is your answer on this? Yes. Okay. Okay. Correct. Very good. You got the gist actually. Very good moment. So the TDS has to be deducted in this case at 5 lakhs rupees definitely because the nature which is rent is being paid to Mr. Joy for more than 240. कहीं पे भी I did not say that 240 is the limit for plant and machinery and 240 is the limit for factory. No. It's not like 194J के 30,000 हर एक का limit है. No. This is rent more than 2,40,000. Plant and machinery है and factory है. TDS deduct होगा. But that being said, yes, on the plant and machinery rent, the TDS would be deducted at 2%. On factory rent, the TDS would be deducted at 10%. That is correct. I'm not ignoring that, but TDS is required or not, you have to see. Okay? Very good, Malvika. Very good, Vishali. Very good, Rama. Good, good, good. Okay? Very good, Harish. Shabash. तो ये पॉइंट है जो प्रैक्टिकल लाइफ में भी यूज होगा एंड एग्जाम में भी आएगा. ओके गाइस, एक और चीज याद रखो, इट डज नॉट मैटर कि वो रेंट, जब व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट हाउस प्रॉपर्टी वी टॉक दैट हाउस प्रॉपर्टी में you have to take an income of which you are an owner. Okay, if that rent is not received as an owner, you take it into other sources, right? From an income earning perspective. But from the perspective of section 194I, what is important is rent. Now, whether that rent is taxable in the hands of the other person as a house property income, is taxable in the hands of other person as a other sources of income or a business income, it does not matter to me. What matters to me is that I am paying rent as a person and I have to deduct the tax at the rate of 10% or 2% as the case may be. I do not have to worry about other aspects. I do not have to worry about other aspects. Whether he's the owner or not, also, that is also not required to me. He can be a sub owner, he can be a subletter or a subtenant, does not matter to me. I am paying rent, I have to deduct tax under 194I. Next point which you have to remember guys, एक refundable deposit होता है, मतलब security deposit होता है. अगर मैं किसी को रेंट देती हूँ साथ में, आई थिंक देयर इज, सपोज आई टेक अ फ्लैट ऑन रेंट, देयर इज another condition that I have to give them security deposit of 2 months. Now, whether on the security deposit will I deduct tax? The answer is no. There is no need to deduct tax on security deposit. Why? Because that is refundable. That is refundable. Okay. Another circular which is here, which can come in the exam also, is of cold storage. Guys, अगर मैं किसी का गोडाउन रेंट पे ले रही हूँ, if I'm taking a godown on rent, I will deduct tax under 194I because godown has been taken on rent 194I. But if I take cold storage facility, अब what is cold storage facility? Cold storage facility में क्या होता है? Let me take you an example through fruits. If I keep my fruits in godown, and that godown is taken on rent 194I. But if I keep my fruits in a cold storage facility which is provided by someone, उसमें क्या होता है? I'm obviously occupying the space for storing my fruits. At the same time, the other person is providing me the facility of cold storage. वहाँ पे proper temperature is maintained so that the fruits don't get destroyed. Proper cooling temperature होता है of -degree Celsius. Everything is taken care of, right? अब obviously मैं ये नहीं कह सकती कि the money which I'm paying to that person is of the nature of rent because I'm using the space. No, since the person is providing me a proper facility in the form of cold storage along with space, that tax has to be deducted under 194C. So if I use a godown just for space, 194I, but if I use a godown with a cold storage facility and extra facility provided to me, then what payment I'm making is not in the nature of just rent. It is a payment in the nature of contract, whereby the other parties has agreed to provide a facility in the form of cold storage and a space to keep the goods at. Okay, got it? So cold storage facility के लिए payment 194C आएगा, 194I नहीं आएगा. 194C would be there, 194I would not be there. Next is guys, so GST. Point number 8 where I'm coming first. On all these types of payments, rather professional payments also or rental payments also, the other party can apply TDS. The other party can apply TDS. The question comes, do I need to deduct tax on the amount or with TDS amount? So you have to exclude TDS. You have to deduct TDS only on the service amount. So suppose someone gives me a bill of 10 lakh and just pay 1,18,000 ka as per 18%, they have applied the GST. I will deduct the tax on 10 lakh, not on 11,18,000. Okay? So excluding GST, I have to deduct the tax. And one more circular which is there. I'll come to seventh wala also. Don't worry. I have not missed it specifically. अब कभी कभार क्या होता है on गवर्नमेंट leasehold rights निकालता है properties, and those properties are given on lease for not 1 year, 2 year, for 100 years sometimes. ठीक है, and you pay a lump sum upfront lease charges. You pay a upfront lease charges to get that lease. To get that lease. So whatever the upfront lease charges which you are paying as a one-time lease charge, उस पे guys TDS is not required to be deducted. Is not required to be deducted annually, monthly, whatever lease payments are going on. Obviously, that would require tax deduction at source. But for lump sum leases, if you're making some type of one-time payment or upfront lease payment, उसपे TDS is not required to be deducted. Next clarification which came from the government is regarding airlines and airports. अब guys क्या होता है? This is not between you and me. This is between airline and airport. Each airline has to give a certain fees to airports. Give a certain types of fees to airport, जिसको कहते हैं PCF, पैसेंजर सर्विस फीस. अब आप बोलोगे कि मैम ये क्या है? सपोज आई टॉक अबाउट अकासा एयरलाइंस. ठीक है, अब अकासा एयरलाइन जो जो एयरपोर्ट यूज करेगी, अब वहां पे एयरपोर्ट पे क्या होगा गाइस? वेन एवर यू गो थ्रू plane, if you have, what happens is that you have to go to the airport, then there is a CASA counter, then there is security counter, there is baggage counter, etc etc. So ये सब मैंने थोड़ी ना पेमेंट करा, मैंने तो सिर्फ CASA को पेमेंट करा एज अ पैसेंजर. But CASA gives each airport a fees to handle their passengers, a fees to handle their passengers. Yeah, airport has provided me the counter, airport has provided me the security service, airport has provided me a sitting area for my passengers. So this PSF is not, obviously airport has provided a space to use, right? A space to use, a space to handle the passengers of the airlines. Now that space, or that's the fees which you're paying as a PSF, by airline to airport, is not covered under 194I. Even if airport has provided a space for the airlines to handle the passengers, etc., etc., but that piece which airline pays to the airport is not covered under 194I. Sorted? Clear? बस ये है मेरा 194I, whereby any person except individual and HF deduct TDS. And individual and HF deduct TDS only if they have a turnover of more than 1 crore or 50 lakhs in the previous, gross receipts of more than 50 lakhs in the previous year, and they're making payment in the nature of rent. TDS is deducted for resident person at the rate of 10% or 2%, 10% for plant and machinery, furniture and fitting, and 2% for 10% for building, furniture and fittings, and 2% for plant and machinery. Threshold limit is more than 2,40,000, due or paid, whichever is earlier. No TDS on refundable deposits. Cold storage के लिए 194C, warehousing facility के लिए 194I. Ownership is not mandatory. Irrelevant कि वो किस हेड में रिसिपिएंट टैक्स कर रहा है. एंड पैसेंजर सर्विस फी पे नो TDS. लॉन्ग टर्म लीजेस पे अपफ्रंट चार्जेस पे नो TDS. एंड इसको क्या था, हाँ, GMT पे नो TDS. ठीक है, क्लियर गाइस? 194I इज क्लियर. शाबाश. नाउ और वो जो हमने केसेस करे थे वो भी क्लियर हो गए. ठीक है, इफ एन एम्प्लॉय इज पेइंग रेंट टू द हाउस ओनर, सैलरीड एम्प्लॉयड है, 194I में नहीं आएगा गाइस. No, we are not required to include GST component. Not only for 194I, but for 194J also. For any type of payment, no GST component is required to be included to deduct. Even the threshold limit has to be seen without GST. चले आगे गाइस. ठीक है. अब ऐसे ही क्वेश्चन मुझसे पूछा कि सैलरीड एम्प्लॉय, अ पर्सन with a salaried employee, he's making payment of rent. वो TDS कहाँ काटेगा? Obviously, is not covered under 194J. Obviously, is not covered under 194J. Then, guys, उसके लिए 194I में is not covered. So, for them, 194IB is introduced. Payment of rent by certain individuals or HUF. Section which is there is 194IB. 194IB is a section which is there for payments of rent by certain individuals or HUF. कौन से certain individual or HUF जो I में cover नहीं होते? Who are not covered under I? Any person who does not have a turnover of more than 1 crore in the preceding year in case of business or 50 lakhs in case of profession, वो I में cover नहीं होते. Salaried individual I में does not get cover. So if they are making payment of rent, where the TDS they will deduct under 194 IB. तो आप बोलोगे कि मैम TDS काटना ही था, so then TDS compliances आ जाएंगे again, so what is the point of giving them the exception? So that's why 194 IB is just like 194 M. Here also tax has to be required to be deducted, but no need of TAN. No need of TAN by deductor. Deductor can deduct tax without having TAN and has to deduct tax only one time, and one form has to be filed, which is in the form of challan come return. He does not have to deposit tax monthly, does not have to file the return quarterly. Just one thing, one time they have to do. ठीक है. So वो अब ये आपको कब समझ आएगा? When you know that why they are not covering individuals and HF, and why would you understand that? That when you know, when any person on whom tax deduction at source liability attracts has to do a lot of transactions or has to do a lot of compliances and has to have a, again, a financial burden aa jata because you will keep an accountant to do it or so and so. So to give relief of from all the common payments, be it 194A, 194C, 194H, 194J, which are very common, or 194I, for any business, small payers to have, they have excluded their liability from them. इसलिए individuals HUF not having high turnovers or not having high gross receipts in the preceding years are excluded, because otherwise they will be more burden to on them. But at the same time, because of such exclusions, some high value transactions are missed, like a salaried individual making payments of more than 50 lakhs for catering, etc., or for personal purpose. So, इसलिए उसके लिए 194M आ गया. Similarly, a salaried individual who has a good salary package of say 30-40 lakhs can be paying rent of say 70,000 per month, but he is not required to deduct tax because he's not covered under 194I. So ऐसी मोटी transactions which are very impactful transactions, उनको cover करने के लिए they got another route. ठीक है, we will not get you done all the tax TDS compliances, obtaining TAN, deducting every month, paying every month, etc. Just deduct tax one time and pay it us to one time. No need to get TAN also. Just fill a form, give us the details, and you are good to go. Okay, so 194 IB is also covers rent, but it covers rent by certain individuals. वो कौन से individuals and HF which are not covered under 194I, ठीक है, which are not covered under 194I. For that, rent of immovable property, IB is covered. Second question which comes here is, यहाँ पे guys only immovable property है. Rent on immovable property है, no, that is land or building. यहाँ पे plant and machinery is not covered. Only rent on immovable property is covered. Please write it carefully. Rent on immovable property is covered. Any salaried individual paying rent for machinery does not have to deduct tax anywhere. Rate is, please write the rate. Rate is 5%. P or the deductee is resident person. Please fill in that chart. अब यहाँ पे दो चीजें बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है, थ्रेशोल्ड एंड टाइम ऑफ डिडक्शन. Threshold and time of deduction. Guys, threshold is that you have to deduct tax under section 194 IB only if the rent per month is more than 50,000. Rent per month is more than 50,000. So again, let's come back to a salaried individual paying rent of 40,000 per month has to deduct tax? No. A person having a turnover of less than 1 crore paying rent of 40,000 per month has to deduct tax? No. Person having turnover of more than 1 crore in the preceding year paying rent of 40,000 has to deduct tax? Yes. With section 194I, not IB. 194I. IB में खाली वो आएंगे जो IB covered नहीं है. Okay. So rent per month is more than 50,000. Time of deduction. अब यहाँ पे rent तो you are paying every month. Time of deduction, guys, is last month of the year or last month of tenancy. Last month of the year or last month of tenancy. Then you have to deduct tax at the rate of 5%. मैं एक एग्जाम्पल लेती हूँ गाइस आपके सामने. एक पर्सन है, ठीक है, he is paying rent in the month of April, May, June, July, 58,000 per month. ठीक है. Whether TDS is required to be deducted under 194 IB? Yes, if he is not covered under 194 I. ठीक है. Now, TDS has to be deducted at the rate of 5% in the last month. In the last month कौन सा हुआ? March. So when I'm making due of March or when I'm making payment of March, whichever is earlier, I will deduct the tax at the rate of 5% for the entire year rent. That is 34,800, and I will make the payment of 23,200 to the landlord. Okay, simple. Suppose I have vacated the house in December itself. So instead of March, I will now deduct the tax in the month of December. December का जब rent due होगा, because I know I am vacating the house. So उस पे whatever the rent has been paid till date, उस पे guys 5% would be is happening deducted and the remaining amount would be paid. Simple concept, without no doubt. But एक concept आता है guys यहाँ पे which says when I told you the deductor has to have plan and the deductee has to have the plan. जिसका TDS काटोगे for who the TDS has been deducted, you have to get the plan of that person so that you can tell the department that this tax belongs to this person. Correct? This tax belongs to this person. Now the question is that if I don't have the plan of that person, if I don't have the plan of the person, then the TDS is required to be deducted at the rate of 20%. The TDS is required to be deducted at the rate of 20%. Higher rate आ जाता है 20% का. This is given under one of the provision. When the deductee does not provide the plan, you have to deduct the TDS at the higher rate of 20%. ठीक है. When the deductee does not provide the plan, you have to deduct the TDS at a higher rate of 20% or the rate in section whichever is higher. Now, सपोज करो लैंडलॉर्ड ने मुझे पैन नहीं दिया बिकॉज ही वॉज फेयरिंग कि रेंट ज्यादा कट जाएगा, डिपार्टमेंट को पता चल जाएगा, डिपार्टमेंट विल गेट टू नो आई एम अर्निंग so much of rental income, etc., etc. He did not give me the PAN, but I have to deduct tax. Now the tax has to be deducted at the rate of 20%. So, guys, agar I will say practically, 20% comes to, अब मैं मार्च में हूँ, आई हैव टू डिडक्ट टैक्स एट द रेट ऑफ 20%. 20% ऑफ 6,96,000 कम्स टू 1,39,200. मैं कैसे काटूंगी 1,39,200? बिकॉज ऑलरेडी एवरी मंथ आई एम पेइंग रेंट ऑफ 58,000 एंड आई पेड इट. ओनली कंडीशन इज कि लास्ट मंथ, मार्च मंथ में आके आई हैव टू डिडक्ट टैक्स फॉर द एंटायर ईयर एट द रेट ऑफ 5%, or for those months where the rent is more than 50,000. Okay, but how will I deduct tax now? Because tax deduction at 20% is coming without PAN, because of not having PAN, is 1,39,200. So government said in cases where the tax has to be deducted at a higher rate because no PAN is given, then obviously it has to be deducted at the rate of 20%. But since you don't have an income you don't have an income or the payment from which you have to deduct tax, in that case, the maximum tax which you will deduct would be equal to the rent amount, would be equal to the rent amount of that month. So if no PAN is given and the tax is required to be deducted and there is no amount, sufficient amount, because PAN is not given and you don't have 20% to deduct the tax from, then the maximum tax which you will deduct is the rental amount of that month, and so that means the entire amount is deducted as tax and is deposited to the government. So naturally अब किसी का इतना ज्यादा टैक्स कटेगा, पूरा रेंट नहीं मिलेगा, so you will automatically, because of courtesy, will give me the PAN. Got it, guys? Clear? So these are the provisions of section 194 IB. कोई डाउट? फटाफट बताओ. रामा, सर्टिफिकेट देते हैं, इस केस में भी देते हैं, डोंट वरी, विदाउट टैन वाले में भी, बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली आई एम नॉट सेइंग यू गिव नॉट गिविंग एनी पर्टिकुलर्स टू द डिपार्टमेंट, यू आर गिविंग द पर्टिकुलर्स टू द डिपार्टमेंट, बट इन जस्ट वन फॉर्म. You're not waiting every month or every quarter to deposit and file the return respectively. Certificate भी issue होता है, that is also simple, don't worry. अरे लैंडलॉर्ड प्रशांत थोड़ी ना टैन लेगा, टेनेंट को टैन लेना पड़ेगा ना इन केस ऑफ 194 आई, because who is the deductor, the payer, who pays the rent? Tenant. What if the rent of some month is less than 50,000? Will it be considered? So suppose from April to June, the rent was of 45,000. Then it increased to 52,000. So only for those months where the rent is of more than 50,000, for those months you will deduct the tax, and that too in one go at the end of the year. Yeah, अगर आप जल्दी खाली कर रहे हो, if you're leaving the house earlier, then at the end of the vacancy month. A salaried person is building his house, but he takes machine of cement making on rent and some material in rent. Then tax. अरे machine पे नहीं, will not deduct the tax ना, because he's not covered. जिस जो provisions में if you are covered, fine. If you're not covered, you are not covered. Simple. तभी तो TDS पढ़ रहे हैं, so that you should know. See how to understand who is covered or who is not covered, how what rent has to be seen or what tax section has to be seen. First, see the nature of payment, see the respective section, then see whether you are an eligible deductor, answer yes or no. Whether you are eligible deductee, answer yes or no. Whether the threshold limit is crossed, answer yes or no. Whether the rate then or other point is getting hit, that is how you do the question. Clear, guys? So I'll not pick up the last section, which is 194N, because again, it will take another 15-20 minutes, which I don't want you people today to put in. But definitely, our all sections of TDS have been covered. Today, we did 194C, 194J, 194H, 194M. 194I and 194IB. So in case any of you has any doubt, I think someone asked regarding advertising. Guys, अगर मैं advertising का payment दे रहा हूँ as a business concern, खुद की advertising कराना है, तो I will अगर a business की advertising कराना है, I will deduct tax under 194C. Now, if advertising agency is making payment to models, they will deduct tax for 194J. If advertising agency is making payment to actor, 194J. If advertising agency is making payment to any newspaper or any television channel, they have taken 2 lakhs from me, but they are making payment of 1,50,000 to the television channel or newspaper. So the question is कि वो 50,000 क्या advertising agency का income as commission है? अगर commission है तो 194H होना चाहिए, but the certificate says, or sorry, the clarification comes and says, the circular says it is not a commission. It is just a spread a person has kept, no need for 194H. हाँ, but whatever payment I'm making, 194C. और बताओ, और कोई डाउट? नो डाउट? क्लियर? नहीं क्लियर? कुछ भी नहीं? गाइस, अगर नहीं आएगा सेक्शन तो मैं 194 एंड स्टार्ट कर दूंगी. So quickly tell me, is there any doubt or no doubt? One thing you have to do, you have to read and do all the illustrations carefully. Clear हो गया? Shall we end the class? Thank you so much, guys. See you day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, we have a lot of things to do. We have one TDS sections, we have other TDS sections, we have 190 TCS sections. So please come prepared and please come well studied and please join on time, because क्या होता है, sometimes I'm in the middle of topic and people join late and then they say, ma'am, please explain again. So please join on time. See you guys in the next class. Thank you. Bye.